a problem considered worthy very much. A few control engineers, control theory people said it was important. Then it all started. And here we should say we were there. It really started, it was Tony that kicked Hans Richard and I into it by giving us University of Texas report where they did a simple trajectory following device and mechanically verified that the algorithm was correct. It was a simple bang-bang controller for those in control engineering. And we thought we would use a somewhat more sophisticated one because we could apply with a bit of a twist some part of the ratio calculus. So we wrote a paper about this, and we were smiled at by control engineering colleagues because this was really we did have something to offer on the other side, on the programming side, and supported by, among others, Amir Noeli, who could see the idea of this. It emerged into a couple of very nice conferences on hybrid systems. They were edited volumes back then in 1993, and we had a very badly named paper, an extended duration calculus, just as a warning to young people, never call something extended or new, like New College or Neustadt. They are too bad. And of course, within the PROCOS community, if you can do it with duration calculus, you can do it with CSP. Dear Frank got an interest in it and did a very nice semantic theory as well. So it still lives, I noticed when I saw this workshop. So we are going to contribute to it. But why does it live? What are the applications? I think that's important. Where do we have this interleaving of programming and really evolutions, transitions and evolutions? Systems with mode changes. I have taken a number of applications from the coming conference here in April of hybrid systems, computation and control, just to get a feel of where it is now. So what do we find? We find systems with mode changes, complex mode changes. Mode changes are transitions. So, of course, powertrains, that's what drives your car through the traffic and makes it stand still without using too much petrol. Dynamics for jumping locomotion, I hardly know what that is, but I imagine it's some kind of device that can jump around in a room, perhaps catching flies. Or bipedal robots, that's me.
Yeah.
And it's a very complex composition of continuous motion and transitions when you look at it. And then, of course, biological modeling. What's happening inside us is also evolution and transition. So there's another area. Sometimes when I look at the other ones, I say it's really for people who are desperate when they have to model something, because the classical models in the continuous domain does not fit, and neither does the discrete models. You can't program it, and you can't just make a continuous control. You have to combine them. Distributed control ventilation regulation in buildings. I don't know whether fire alarms are included, dynamic power networks, high-speed trains, coordination of semi-autonomous agents, air traffic control, mobile robots, and cars. I'm going to let Ernst Rüdiger Olderock return to that. Oh, and if we look at the general topics, again from the most recent conference here, viability is really the ability to control a system back to a stable state. Hybrid automata. I'm going to return to those in a moment. It's the dominating formula. It's very operational, and it's linked up to tools and abstraction techniques and verification and reachability analysis. Hybrid automata are very popular because they link up to model checking, which has taken us very far in some cases. Another point I'm going to make is that the synthesis is important. That is that you, from your specifications, your models, can derive a running system without touching it by modeling programmers. So this gives you an idea, I hope, of why it might be important and what are some of the topics. Formalisms, hybrid automata I have mentioned, and then you can continue the list, hybrid I/O automata, which are somewhat more compositional, hybrid CSP, hybrid action systems, hybrid this and that. Because essentially you just take my very first slide and then you say you have to implement a very time-consuming assignment statement in your language. That's it. I'm going to show you hybrid automata. Some of you are supposedly very familiar with it, but just to give you the flavor. You take an ordinary automaton with your locations off and on, and then you have a collection of variables, and within your states you have essentially, as you have seen, constraints, and you have a differential equation in this case. Then on the transitions you can have updates of your variables, which are really transitions, and you can have guards. And then if you want to, you can have events guarding them as well. So it's everything you ever wanted to have and a bit more. Semantics, well, we have the states, and they should satisfy an invariant. Initial states, they should satisfy an initial condition. Okay. And then you have your labels, and then you have your transition relations, which are essentially either you have an event and a jump. This is called a jump because you make a jump in your variables. Or you can have the timing transitions where in an ordinary timed automaton, time would just pass. It's a very trivial differential equation. X dot equal to 1, if you like. Here you have to find a solution function for your flow, and then you execute it for this time period, and the state has changed without the location having changed. Now I'm going to show you one attempt of doing the same within a formalism hybrid action systems. It's the weakest precondition semantics. So for every action, you say what is the weakest precondition in terms of predicate Q, which you choose after the action. And this is the conventional ones which you have false, skip, well, if Q should hold after, Q should hold before. And if you have an assertion, then of course it should hold, otherwise you never get anywhere. The well-known substitution of the expression for x in assignment, and so on and so on. Choice is conjunction, and there's a fixed point definition for this. It's a strong formalism in the sense that there are guards. We can say you can only enter these if there are guards, if they're guard code, and there's also a termination condition. However, let me just this say, how can you add a differential equation? Well, you say you have to give an initial state P is a condition on that one, and then you have a differential equation in x and x dot. They could be vectors if you like. And what do? You do an assignment update with the end value of a trajectory, and you take it over all possible trajectories which satisfy the differential algebraic equation and starts within P, and which terminates, that is delta phi of P is the termination time of it. Okay, so it's just rather mechanical. I think I'm going to skip this one. Then you can essentially verify that an assignment of one is actually formally. We can show that our computers work. Okay. This is a suitable formalism that has been worrying me for some years because I've worked on and off with hybrid systems with colleagues in control engineering. And hybrid automata are certainly easy to understand. I hope I didn't make them too complex for you. But extension of model checkers apply, and extensions of simulation tools apply. What I don't like about them is that they work with global variables, global time, and they are essentially non-compositional to the worst degree. They are flat. However, I think they serve their purpose very well if we look at systems with mode changes, biological modeling, where you have very tightly coupled models, where the flatness doesn't really matter. However, to start from below, if you look at this limited control and coordination, then we really need composition and able to reason locally about it without losing the overall. However, they are obviously very difficult to understand. There are almost no analysis tools. We will hear a bit about some of them later. Almost no simulation tools. But however, they have mostly work with local variables and local time, and they can be made compositional. So I haven't given up hope yet that we might have something to do in this field. And I mean, now I'm going to tell you about some ongoing work with Hans-Rudi Waldorf, Sven Linker, who's a PhD student at Oldenborg. No, he's now a doctor. He got his doctorate recently. And a colleague of mine, Rafal Wisniewski, who has got a double degree in mathematics and control engineering. Professor. I called it Linking the Worlds, and it's really inspired by work by Tony and Yefeng on unifying theories, and it goes back to the PROCOS days, because if you have very complex models, then it's a good idea to keep them a bit separate. So we have on the top the symbolic model space, where we can work as programmers, and at the bottom I have given you a Rafal's model space, which is really a set of differential equations. And what do we have to do to put the two worlds together? That's essentially linking them by saying, what do the symbolic gods and our symbolic action mean when we get to the concrete level? To do. And then we can go our separate ways to use whatever techniques we have. So we can do programming, we make a discrete model with symbolic representation of states. Behaviors are finite state machines, if we like finite state machines, or programs if you like. We can formulate safety and liveness properties in terms of the symbolic state, and we can verify these properties. And the control engineer can identify the concrete model for objects with sensors and actuators and design and validate a good and sophisticated control. And then we just have to tell what are the symbolic gods. Well, they are, for a control engineer, observers. They are functions that gives a value to the upper level. I'm skipping hordes of details here. But on when we communicate downwards, we give a set points to the lower level. And then, if we can do this, then we can keep the worlds harmoniously cooperating without sort of getting the big joint universal model. So, hybrid psychophysical system theory is, as I've said, important. I've tried to convince you for developing safe embedded systems. And I would say that control theory has developed hybrid automata to a working level for tightly coupled applications, and we should be glad of that. However, there's work to do for programming theory in decentralized applications, and a way I see as promising and the way forward is linking these theories. And then I'll just end by saying, showing one last slide, and you can read it out. The gas burner, well, it was really started with a constraint on a cost function, and that's a link to control theory. And it was symbolic after a while. Thank you very much for listening to this.
Just to give one remark, you talk about the simulation tool for hybrid CSP. Actually, we have implemented such a tool recently. We translate the hybrid CSP into simulink so that the simulation of hybrid CSP can be done by the simulink.
Yes. I agree. There's work done now where tools are developed, as you say, for being able to analyze hybrid CSP programs. I said all works code tools, because if I think, Nigel, that you would agree with me that the mainstream of tools are working with hybrid automata within the field. Okay?
Versus skeptical concerning compositionality of hybrid automata. Of course, they are first instances related to model. Is it really that they are somehow not really amenable to compositionality? I mean, if you of course insist on compositionality to mean that it should be on the message passing level, then this is perhaps not what you would do. But on a state-based concurrency basis, which is not very unnatural for control theorists, I think you can get quite a bit on, because then you have trace intersection between different traces and so on.
Yes, yes and no. Of course, you can have a discipline where you can make hybrid automata compositional. Then they become models, I think, for some programming notation. It's just like saying, can you be structured in assembly language? Yes, you can, but it's hard at midnight when you have to complete something. And the same goes for hybrid automata.
Yeah.
Okay?
One more question.
This is another broad question, because you raised the wider question of modeling hybrid systems and how formal methods community will engage with it.
Yes.
Now, control engineers have their own take on developing control systems. Fairly sophisticated mathematics to deal with this. Formal methods, people are trying to do a poor job of mimicking it within their theories, and what Martin is laughing. On the other hand, we are asking questions that control theorists find hard to answer. Hard safety questions. They don't analyze. They look for asymptotic stability. They look for more heuristic notions of controllability, right? So the relationship between two communities, to me, seems to be uneasy. In other branches of engineering, you divide work. They analyze their thing. We analyze our thing. Are you seeing any sign of partitioning the work so that they can do their job, we can do our job, and somehow we can give off each other's analysis, instead of trying to mimic everything they do in our framework and doing a poor job?
Thank you for the question. The last point here in my talk was really an attempt at giving a separation to the linking, so we can work easily on each side of it. It's still not proven that it works, but I see it as a way forward, because we should not reinvent all of modern control, which dates back from the 1950s. And I doubt whether control engineers have been amazingly clever to take up automata theory and put it into their formalism. But programming theory, less. So let's try to work out a contract on the interfaces. As Tony has said so many times, it's at the interfaces we have to work. Okay?
Thank you, Lee. So our next speaker is Martin Krasler, who was at Kiel, another old-time PROCOS person. He's now followed us, really going to open it. He's going to also talk about hybrid systems.
Okay. Okay, it seems that this one is resisting hybrid systems. No.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Yeah. It's fine to be here and to join in this, let's say, family meeting again. So it's already a very interesting feeling to see so many guys again here. So I originally planned to exactly give the talk that Anders was giving. So originally I thought, well, I basically the same, go on from the guest burner. But then I looked at the program and thought I have to somehow sidestep. So I will talk about automatic constraint solving as a means for actually analyzing hybrid systems. This is joint work, as you see, with a number of guys, some of them being previous PhD students of mine, other colleagues from a large German project called AVEX, Automatic Verification and Analysis of Complex System, and another EU project, MOOCs, but it somehow originated from the PROCOS lines. So essentially, I was perhaps asked to tell you how PROCOS changed my life. PROCOS was well known as the gas burner company, and you can see I also started from the gas burner here. This is what it looked like when I did my PhD thesis, a bit more refined than the previous one, but still a very simple system. And what I would say is that PROCOS was neither my first contact with embedded system nor with formal methods. Coming from Hans Langmark's group, I had been well introduced to formal methods at that time already, despite just being a master's student. But it was perhaps my first encounter with using formal verification for also talking about the environment, not just the software perspective, but also the environment, like in the gas burner. Then we learned all those messages, how to do it formally, how to talk about the integrated leakage time by reasoning, about sums of latencies and reaction time, and so on and so on. So this perhaps was very influential. I'm today professor for hybrid systems, so somehow I kept the line. And actually, I followed exactly the line that Anders was pointing to, from gas burners to highly automated driving. I'm now having quite some projects with automotive industry to make automated driving not only functional, but also safe, and they're very interested in that. Perhaps the difference is that I always did it with a stronger emphasis on automatic reasoning. But this is kind of the official message of how PROCOS changed my life, and perhaps in fact it changed it fundamentally different. So you saw already the first major meeting was on Von Holland in a hotel called Simpson Score, which if you look at the web pages today announces those three features here. And the middle one is Lekker Man, which means something like delicious meals, which was very true and invariant of all PROCOS meetings. So the problem that actually shaped my academic life from there on was how to solve the delicate and maybe delicious problem of how to solve the PROCOS coffee break dilemma. And we'll talk about this one today, PROCOS coffee break dilemma. So once you are at a PROCOS meeting, you basically were longing for three things. Of course, visiting the restroom in between, having a chat with nice colleagues, particularly the project coordinators, whoever that may be at that time, and last but not least, getting a sufficient supply of this nice Danish pastry that always was around. If you make it to be back in time, the pause is 15 minutes, getting at least 7 cookies down there, 1 move to the toilet, and 2 chats with colleagues, you're lucky, you make the game. Otherwise, you lost simply. That's the rules of the game. So now you can decide which one to do first. So you might perhaps decide to first go in the direction of the restrooms. With a certain probability you will find them occupied, you have to return. Let's say 30%. With 40% probability you are diverted by a colleague and called for a chat, so you also don't make it there, but at least your chats get incremented over there. Or you are successful and you did this part of the job. Or you might decide to first go for a chat. We all know everybody is trying to prolong the coffee break. So each chat, in case, you always succeed in finding somebody to chat, but each chat somehow takes a little bit more than a third of the remaining coffee break, or 2/3 plus a minute extra. Or you might want to go for the cookies. In case you're not diverted for a chat, you make it there. Being polite, you collect at most 4 cookies and at most 1% of the remaining cookies. And all of us know, of course, that cookies are subject to an exponential decay law on each workshop you have ever visited. So the problem now is, will you make it back by scheduling your decisions, which one to do first, and based on the outcome, which one to next, and so on. Are you able to enforce that you are back in time with at least 75% of probability? This is our game. And you can now bet whether you can, but I would go on. This model actually is a hybrid automaton. As you saw, you have some non-deterministic choice, you have continuous dynamics down here, very local actually. And you have probabilistic choice, which is why it's called a probabilistic hybrid automaton. Of course, you can use this for other things. In coffee break dilemmas, you can also use it for analyzing autonomous driving subject to faults in the sensors. You can use it in system biology, in economics, whatever you think. So how would we analyze this one? We do it by a symbolic constraint solving approach. This is one of the methods we learned from PROCOS. So we start first from, and you have seen this one, what our problem is. You have a probabilistic hybrid approach. You have a reachability problem in there that you want to analyze. By translating it to some logics, so then doing solving here, and you get the certificate out there. Next thing we will look into is how to set up dedicated logics. Just like PROCOS came up with the duration calculus eventually, to have a dedicated logic for talking about delays and accumulated delays and so on. We will go here for a very strange one called SSMTs, the stochastic satisfiability modulo theory. To the next part of the talk, then we will go on how to translate our problem in the symbolic encoding. Over. So what is the idea? The idea is, you might have heard about SMT, submodular theory. The idea is that it was observed some time back that now we have very good subsolvers for solving the propositional satisfiability problem. And on the other hand, theory solvers for rich theories, for example, arithmetics. Both have their pros and cons. Subsolver is confined to propositional variables only. The theory solvers are generally confined just to conjunctive systems. And then this idea came up to tie them back to back in a formalism called satisfiability modulo theory, which then can solve large Boolean combinations of atoms from those theories, be it lists, be it arrays, be it arithmetic. In the case of arithmetic, you would then have a workhorse for what is called bounded model checking, depth bounded model checking, stability proofs, and so on of hybrid systems. For these that Anders introduced to you. Now, when Holger Hermans and I were looking for a topic for the second phase of MX funding, we came up with the idea that in the meantime, there has been quite a bit of extensions to that problem in the planning community called stochastic subs. We have stochastic constraint problems in the propositional domain. And what would happen if we do the same kind of back-to-back coupling over here? Coming to something called stochastic satisfiability modulo theory, which would then solve stochastic constraint problems, but overcome their preoccupation to finite domains being in there. And whether this might be a tool for verifying probabilistic hybrid systems like the coffee break dilemma I just showed you. So this is what it's about. So as said, it was inspired by a long list of literature from the stochastic planning community, stochastic constraint programming, and stochastic ZAP. Those guys mentioned over here, in particular Littmann and Majacek, have been very influential over there. But that extends it to infinite domains, restricted to some part of it, we don't need those here. And then we'll do just the same trick that was done for the subsolving, where conflict-driven close learning was extended to conflict-driven close learning over theories. We now would like to extend stochastic subsolving to that extended by theories. So the formula here looks as follows. It is a satisfiability modulo theory formula over some arithmetic theory, which may include even differential equations. So we're solving these like that. X is larger than 0, or 2a times sine of 4b is larger than 3, and so on and so on. It's an undecidable fragment of arithmetic, but we have some algorithms dealing with that one. Of course, not complete ones, but pretty good in general. And then we add the prefix of quantifiers. Existential quantifiers, you all know, and randomized ones. Those are those upside down R's, so we're working hard on having the whole alphabet upside down. So finally, I will swap my slides. But for the moment, we just have those 2 or 3, E, A, and R on top. So what does it mean, this quantifier prefix? To understand a random quantifier, you perhaps best think about randomized quantification as an experiment on an automaton. At each nail here, you push in a ball and it is diverted on each nail. So with some probability, it goes left, it goes right again. It ends up in some slowdown. And you get a probability distribution for how you end up here. So let's now name those slots, for example, 0 to 4, and you get a distribution. 0 with a probability of 1 over 16 and so on, depending on what your problem is like. And this is exactly what a randomized quantifier does. It lets the variable range over some range, 0 to 4, for example, like here, and it assigns probabilities to the different options. So 0 is with P0, which is 1/16, 1 with probability P1, which is 4 over 16, and so on. And this is what a randomized quantifier would. Now we come to quantifier alternation. So now we have a prefix of first a randomized quantifier assigning to x according to some distribution, then an extensional one assigning to y, the left with the right, and so on. So what would happen here is that first you go through the randomized experiment, which would assign to x, for example, 3. Based on what comes out, you decide for the extension quantifier what would be the best option for answering that one. So you might decide, for example, to push the scale to the left, which would then bring you down here. And here again, you're a random quantifier, so you again do a random experiment, which might in the end bring you down here. So now you have instantiated 3 variables in your problem, and you ask, is the remaining problem still satisfiable? If yes, you have won the game. If not, you have not. The problem here is to get an optimal strategy for the extension quantifier to maximize the probability of ending up in a satisfying solution down. On an example, it looks as follows. We have this formula. You have seen this one here, which the guys in stochastics call a matrix, and there's quantifier prefix. And what it essentially does is it spans all possible instantiations of the quantifier prefix. So we have 2 times 2 here. We have 4 variants. The leftmost pass says x is set to 0 and y is set to 0. And then you are asking, is this problem after instantiating those 2 variables still satisfied? Here, as x is 0, so this is not satisfied, so we have to satisfy that one, and y is also 0, so we have to satisfy that one, and obviously those 2 are contradictory, so we get here out an unsatisfiable problem. Which means, and this is the semantics of this logic, it's no longer Boolean, it assigns a probability of satisfaction as a semantics. So here it says the probability of satisfaction of this instance is 0. If instead we assign x to 0 and y to 1, you get a satisfiable problem here because y is 1, so this disjunction is already satisfied, so you just have to satisfy this one. It's not too hard to come up with values for a and b to satisfy this one here. So this is satisfiable, giving 1. Now this here is giving you a weighted sum because it says I'm assigning the 0 with probability 0.6, and this gives me a 0 down here and the 1 with 0.4. So I'm having an overall probability 0.6 times 0 plus 0.4 times 1, which gives the satisfaction probability of 0.4 over here. If we go to the other branch, then the 2 instances are both satisfiable, such that they add up to 1 here. And now the extension quantifier here would just take whichever is the better strategy, which means that here we are going for 1. In general, the upper bound would not be 1, it would be more interesting, but here would be 1 at the total. It's a satisfaction probability based on optimally deciding that. Now, how can we use this for probabilistic hybrid automaton? How to translate those beasts? So we have a probabilistic hybrid automaton here, which is a very simple model of a cooling system. It has a differential equation in here, which makes sure the dynamics when you are in the state controlled, and then whenever temperature gets too high, it switches off the cooling system. Or gets too low, minus 22, it switches it off. When it gets too high, larger than minus 18, it switches it on. But switching on sometimes fails with a probability of 6%, and you are in a defunct state. So what you do is, you make sure that for all the transition variants in here, you get quantifiers in place. So here, for example, on the right-hand side, you have a randomized experiment that says with 6% probability and going to defunct, else to controlled. So you get a randomized quantifier that is assigning to this value RTR, one option with 6% and the other with 94%. Likewise, for deciding for those transitions, which might be non-deterministic actually, we do an existential quantifier that says I'm taking existentially whichever would be the better option. And then you do a predicative encoding, as we also learned in PROCOS, which just tells us what should be the case, for example, if I go from control to defunct. So this line here, I'm starting in control, I'm ending in defunct, and in between the conditions have to be in place. For going here, this condition has to be true, this quantifier has to decide for actually taking this transition, this quantifier has to decide for actually taking this transition, and then the effect would be the temperature doesn't change and I'm in defunct. And if I'm staying in a state, so I'm going from control to control, then of course I'm following the differential equation in here, and I'm making sure that this invariant, which is a side condition for staying there, is satisfied. And now in order to check your problem, you're unwinding it. So here you are just writing as a set of symbolic statements what it means to go within k steps from initial state to somewhere. So you say an initial state predicate and then the transition predicate, which was this block down here, the transition predicate. And I can go from an instance x0 of my state variables to x1, from x1 to x2, and so on for k steps. And I want, at somewhere along the line, I want to hit that state. This is what is called bounded model checking. We just now add a very, very awkward quantifier prefix in the front, which makes sure the semantics of our game, which is called a 1.5 player game. There's one player, the full player, actually playing a strategy, the existential player, and another one, the randomized one, who is just playing by chance, which is counted as a half player because it doesn't really have a strategy, just downplaying, just throwing your dice. This alternating quantifier prefix encodes actually the alternation between selecting a transition more deterministically and then probabilistically choosing between a variant. It turns out that this is a perfect encoding. So the probability of satisfying this formula according to our semantics is exactly the accumulated probability over all the passes possible of reaching a bad state within k steps under a malicious adversary, one that is always doing the worst possible. So this means your system is unacceptable whenever for some k the probability of satisfying this piece of the formula is larger than your tolerance. So if your remaining error, for example, should be 10 to the minus 5, then this should never get larger than 10 to the minus 5, no matter how large k is. That's basically the idea. Now the question is how to solve this actually, given this quantifier prefix. The idea is essentially we have to solve whether the satisfaction probability of such a formula is high. This formula has a quantifier prefix that is set up from alternating randomized and existential quantifiers and as a body, a Boolean combination of arithmetic constraints. The solution here is to take an appropriate satisfiability modular theory solver and implant the branching rules for the quantifiers. So essentially, here is a list of solvers we have been doing over the last few years. I won't go too much into the details. So that's some for hybrid systems, some for hybrid systems having ODEs, non-linear ODEs in there, and then a combination actually talking about these branching rules. And the basic idea is you would simply, in first instance, you would enumerate all assignments to all the quantified variables. Of course, this is completely stupid because it's exponential, so you die immediately after 2 or 3 quantifiers. But in principle, for the moment, just let's do it. We instantiate them completely. Then we call a subordinate SMT solver on the instance obtained down here, and then we aggregate the results. So this one is satisfiable, not satisfiable, it gets a 0, this is satisfiable, it gets a 1, and so on. And then we aggregate those ones along with the quantifier. This is a principle. It doesn't work very well in practice, but in principle you do. Now what would you add? Of course, this quantifier tree is exponential in size and the number of quantifiers, which then coincides with the unwinding depths. So now you have to be a bit clever. You want to skip major parts and just analyze small subparts of this whole exponential quantifier tree. This you do by mechanizing deductions. So whenever your subsolver, your SMT solver says, in order to make the thing satisfied, x should be at least 3, then of course from every quantifier talking about x, you chop off everything that is talking about values smaller than 3. This is a basic idea you have been using in school mathematics all over. And this is essentially one of the many optimizations being mentioned. So the main reduction by logical deduction is exactly that. Whenever you say, in order to make this sure, given that the other variables already have been assigned, x has to be at least 3, then I can get rid of part of the remaining. You also exclude based on conflict causes, you learn conflicts, you do a lot of other things, and this actually saves you. Okay, now we have to ask about the underlying solver, and I just give you a very brief impression on what the SMT layer does here. SMT layer is solving formula of this form. You have some disjunction of Boolean variables and of what is called bound and continuous variables. And those continuous variables can be abbreviations for pretty complex constraints. So essentially this H3 is larger than 6.2. If you substitute for H3 the definition of H3, which in turn uses the definition for H2 and H1, then here it talks about that x squared minus 2y should be at least 6.2. And you are now reasoning, and I won't go too much into the details, formally about those bounds. So first of all, for example, you say A should be true. So I'm just making an assumption that A is true, nothing really bad happens. I'm also assuming B is true. You see if A and B are both true, C should perhaps be true in order to save satisfiability of this here. So you deduce by clause 2 that C should be true. But as soon as C is true, D should also be true and D should be false. But if A, B, and C are all true, then D should also be true. So you get a conflict over here. This is classical subsolving. You have a conflict, you took two assumptions, you have a conflict, and you cut in between, for example, here. And whatever is to the left of the cut you learn is a reason of what you should never ever try again. So here, for example, you should never ever try again to set A to true and C to true, which you learn as an additional so-called conflict clause. You return, unwind some of the assumptions, then it fires like this one. And now we're doing the very same on the arithmetical level. So let's simply try what happens if y is at least 4. Then clause 7, I hope you can read it, which tells that h2 should be minus 2y, tells us that if we have a lower bound on y, we have an upper bound on h2, namely minus 8, because h2 is minus 2y. So we get this one. Doing another assumption like x is smaller or equal to 3, things get more intricate, because if now we are having that y is larger or equal to 4 and x is smaller or equal to 3, then clause 5 down here tells us that h3 has to be at least 6.2 in order to make this one true here. On the other hand, now we can deduce if x is between minus 2 and plus 3, because h1 is x squared. X squared has to be smaller or equal to 9. So we deduce that one. And now we get that if h1 is smaller or equal to 9, then by, what is it, clause 8 down here, which is automatically reshuffled, so it does not only tell us that h3 is h1 plus h2, but also that h2 is h3 minus h1. So from x being this, from h3 being 6.2 and h1 being at most 9, we can deduce that h2 is at least minus 2.8. which is in conflict to this one here. So again, we can cut here between the conflict and the reasons, and for example, learn that we never again should instantiate x with something that is larger than minus 2, y with something that is larger than 4, and x with something that is smaller than 3. So again, we can learn this here in contraposition as a disjunction. One of the three at least has to be false. And this now excludes a large part of our search space, by basically automation of what we started in PROCOS originally to reason about bounds and their relative relations. If you go on like this, and eventually you find kind of a solution, this has been implemented first on the EVEX project, and then a bit later, very, very related algorithms by the CMU guys. Okay, so combining all this, you can now start to actually analyze interesting systems. So for example, network automation systems. This here is a small image on the left of a small network automation system with message contention. So there's this autonomous carriage down here running along a line. Its objective is to deliver some partially provided good to a drilling station where it should be drilled. It runs along this track, it passes some sensors over here. Those sensors send the signal over a congested channel to some PLCs that do the control over there and send back controls. Another question that you might ask is how likely is it that this object would be placed in the right position under the drilling station? If you look at the distribution of the stopping positions, this is a very intricate distribution, so you see queuing theory or so wouldn't find you much. This is a very intricate one, which basically is so intricate because you have the sampling times of those PLCs in there, which interfere strangely. So this one of them is taking input every 7 cycles, the other one I think every 10 cycles. So therefore you get this very strange pattern over here, which is the distribution. This model is set up from 10 concurrent automata, spanning quite a bit of the state space, 24 million discrete states, most of which are of course reachable, but in principle they are there in the product automaton, 23 continuous variables, and we can unwind it actually to depths of 50, which means 100 alternating quantifier blocks, and each of those quantifier blocks is having some 10 quantifiers. So we're talking about 1,000 quantifiers over here, which obviously is quite a bit of possible combinations. Still, it works on standard laptops that are 4 years old, not a very recent one. Depending on which questions you ask, it takes 10 to 17 minutes to analyze. Very much depends on the questions. 17 minutes would be for getting this distribution actually. If you just ask, can I make sure that with 99% of probability, I'm less than a millimeter from the expected position of the drilling object, then it takes something like 10 minutes. It depends on what the question is. That works actually in practice. This brings me to the end. So I hope to have convinced you that concurrent hybrid automata, at least if you're talking about shared state concurrency, they are actually a bit of compositional. If you can do symbolic models by just conjoining the models and then symbolically analyze them. And they are a nice model for modeling a variety of technical and also biological, chemical, economic processes. The hybrid automata as such concentrate on the feedback between the continuous, for example, chemical, and the discrete, for example, supervisory control, and the probabilistic hybrid automata then adds fault models. What happens with a certain probability, a sensor fails or whatever. And they facilitate a quantitative analysis of safety properties, liveness properties, and stability properties of those beasts. And our approach here is using this very nasty logic of stochastic satisfiability modular theory to analyze those objects, which allows us to do a symbolic encoding of the depth-bounded unwindings of the transition systems in there. And those involve constraint problems over continuous arithmetic, nonlinear, and even non-polynomial, so the undecidable fragment of arithmetic, and differential equations. We've extended the solvers to that one, and we have solved quite some instances. The largest we have solved with that one is a network control system, somewhat different from the one I showed to you, having just 2 million discrete locations, but then additionally 6 integer variables, which are crossed at a bit additionally to the discrete state, 4 continuous variables, 2 of which are governed by ODEs. We have been able to unwind that one to 500 quantifier blocks, not really alternating quantifiers because there were only randomized quantifiers in, but then each quantifier block had something like a dozen variables in, so this is something like 6,000 quantifiers in a sequence, which perhaps is not what you would normally solve as a manual exercise in at least your basic computer science classes. This brings me to the end. Thanks for your attention. Questions, please.
Any questions? Yes.
You separate the SMT level from the probabilistic, from the stochastic level.
Yes.
So far, so good, and you get excellent results and nothing against this. But my personal experience is if you integrate such levels, you might get an additional advantage. And of course, you know there are probabilistic logics and so forth, David Poole, etc. Many more. Have you thought of these directions?
Actually, the clear-cut boundary between the two was just for exposition purposes. So actually, we integrate them. So in here, for example, whatever we do down here on arithmetic reasoning of the constraint problems down there is fed back to the quantifier level. So we do quantifier pruning, and there's also a variant of Craig interpolation being implemented here, which even attaches clauses in the problem with probabilities. So actually the reasoning is much closer to what you suggest. Integration, but this integration obviously is very hard to explain, so therefore for reasons of exposition I tend to explain. In principle we are expanding a quantifier tree, doing this level down there to synthesize, but in practice of course it will kill you. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I just have one comment. I wish now we'd had your talk just before the coffee break. We could all try out your wonderful approach to coffee. Thank you very much.
Will there other coffee breaks to try it on?
Yes, exactly.
And in order to just solve this is actually unsolvable. So no matter what you do, 75% is not reachable under those parameters. So in case you're late on the next coffee break, just tell Jonathan or whoever you couldn't make it.
You have to decide which it is. Choose one. Anyway, thank you very much. Well, our final talk was due to be by, as if I mentioned, sadly can't be here, but we do have Susan Dwyer, who's worked with Difeng a lot. He's at the same university, this kind of normal university in Shanghai. So he's going to present Difeng's slides, so please have a little bit of forbearance. I know how difficult it is to present somebody else's slides, and I tend to do sometimes dismally fails in the past. So I hope
I will
you
try
your best.
Yeah. So Difeng, so sorry that the date is still 2014 August. Then this means that several months ago he completed his paper was 31 pages. Then he write the 4 slides of 1006. Then okay, it's huge. I cannot finish. Then maybe I can only finish the first part, and then I go through the remainder within 5 minutes. So the main contribution, because Difeng once give a full talk, in the morning maybe 1 hour or 1 hour and a half, and afternoon 1 hour and a half. Then in East China Normal University, we attended his talk. So for me, I almost understand most of his materials. So Jonathan suggested me to present his work. So last night I using 2 hours or 3 hours to read or what. So maybe I can skip this page hybrid system. Then let me consider this work. So the contribution of his work is he proposed a hybrid modeling language. Then he also introduced the concept, extended the traditional relational calculus concept into hybrid relational concept. Then use this concept to formalize his hybrid modeling language. This modeling language is introduced using this signal calculus. So let's see later. Yeah. So then in his language he introduced the when statements and the until statements. So this is his contents. So initially he extended the traditional relational calculus. Then he also works on this series. Then the semantic introduced this modeling language. Then the laws. Then maybe the last 2 parts, maybe I don't have time for introducing. So this is the traditional relation. So traditional. Let me see. Okay. So this is traditional. So P is just a logical formula to express the initial value and the final value, and alpha P is the alphabet of program. So alpha P contains initial values, and out T contains final value. So this in alpha means the undashed variable, and out alpha means dashed variable. So this is the traditional relation. So hybrid relation, so is let's say So extend this alpha p. So this is the same as the previous one. This one is also as the previous one. So this is the x. This looks like x dash. So this continuous alpha means this alphabet of the program, this part contains the continuous variables in this set. Then we say originally this logic, this expression, this formula contains just express the initial value and the final value. Now we say this p not only can express the initial value and final value, the relationship between discrete variables, it also needed to describe the behavior of continuous variables. So this is the traditional refinement definition. So let's see the example. So the first example is, say, empty relation. Empty relation, so this is A. Then in alpha is A, then out alpha is just, this is X, then here is X dash. Then we see this one does not contain any continuous variables. So this looks like unity of A. It's just everything, every discrete variables keeps no change. So it does not contain continuous variable. So here, this continuous variable set is empty set. So here we don't have the behavior of continuous variables. Then, so here this is the chaotic behavior. This is the same. Then we see chaotic behavior for continuous and discrete systems. Then we see here, this continuous variable can be any continuous discrete variable behaviors. It also contains the continuous variable behaviors. So then we say for differential equation, we say different equation. So this is a different equation. Differential equation can describe the dynamic behaviors. So we say, so this t and this t in, so t and t dash means the observation interval. So starting from time t and ends at t dash. So this is the t and t dash. Then t and t dash combined together is the observation interval of the dynamic behavior you want to observe. So then continuous variable is this v. So then the behavior, just say the logical formula, the behavior we can say, okay, this interval start from t and at t dash. So it should need to satisfy this formula, and also we say for any tau between this interval, then need to satisfy this differential equation. So because we have this, different has this definition of hybrid relational calculus, then it needed to consider relational calculus or hybrid relational calculus, this kind of theory, similar like traditional relational calculus theory. So similar approach to these parts. So definition for hybrid relational calculus for non-deterministic choice is the same as traditional relational calculus. And so this is the definition of infinite choice, similar like the materials in Tony and Jifeng's UTP book. So this is the disjunctivity definition. So this is, say, if PQ are the hybrid relation, then the conditional choice, the definition is similar to, is the same as the traditional relational calculus. So then this is the sequential composition. So sequential composition is here. This is X is the discrete variables. Then this is just the traditional, similar like traditional relational calculus definition. Then we see the continuous variable of program P and Q. Then if the sequential composition of P and Q, the continuous variable should be the union of the two programs. So then also the laws of sequential composition is similar as the conditional relational calculus. So this is relational hybrid relations that disjoint the parallel composition is just like this conjunction, Then also it has a need to satisfy these laws. Then how to attack the shared output like the definition in the UTP book. Then finally need the definition of the merge operation M needed to be defined. So for example, if we say M1 is the merge mechanism to calculate the maximum values. So this one is calculate the conjunctions. So for shared output need merge operator needs to be defined. So we say like the UTP book, then now for hybrid relational calculus, it also needed to have, so this is the substitution of shared objects. Then finally, this X dash needed, because you use substitution M, Then here M and N needed to have this abstract operator. Then final value of X should be like this. So this is, then recursion is similar. So now we come to the healthiness condition. So say we use two variables T and T dash to describe the interval you want to observe. So we see the starting time point and the final timing point should satisfy this condition. So this is so the T and T dash need to this is the function. So then we say H1 function, so need to define it like this. Then H1 function needed to satisfy this is monotonic and idempotent. So this here should be H1. Then also we say HC1 healthiness formulas form a complete lattice. So this is just a T and T dash form a complete the healthiness formula. So then we say the communication for different components, then you can use shared variables, you can use communications. Then in Jiffen's paper, he borrows the technologies from Rostow language, then say use signal calculus, signal delivering and signal receiving to model the interaction between different components. So here, just a signal is introduced into the language. Then we say a signal is present if it is an input signal received from the environment, or it is delivered as a result of performing an output command. So then say, how can we see to just say use this signal to, how can we tackle this signal? Then see combine signal and clock. Then Jiffen has a paper about his clock calculus. Then we see for every clock variable, S is a clock, then S clock and S dot clock dash. So this looks like a variable, this looks like a dashed variable. So then S clock means at the starting time point, then then it is a set or it is a trace recorded when you received this signal previously. Maybe 1 hour ago, you received this signal, or 2 hours ago, you also received this signal. Then S clock dash means from this one, from T to T dash, you receive the signal, the arrival of signal S at what time point. If say from time t, then a half second later you receive the signal S. Then 1 second later you receive another S. So you need to put t plus half and t plus 1 into this set. So let's see. So clock dash and conjunction with this set is empty. Means indicates that S is absent during the interval. Because it's empty, that means in this interval, the signal S has not arrived. Then if the T dash received belongs to this set, then this means at least at the T dash time point, the signal arrives. Okay. So then also needed to, for this signal clock, then needed to have this healthiness conditions. Then we see S clock should is a subset of S clock dash, and S clock dash should belong to S clock combined with this one. So this is a subset of this one. So then based on this one, it all need to have, can define healthiness conditions. So then later he also defines program execution state, then also healthiness conditions and more. So let's see. So for skip, if the initially at the starting point, ST is not divergent, then this means the previous process is not in a divergent state, then the skip process can execute, but it does not do anything. If the previous process is in the divergent, then the whole process will also be in the divergent state. So then this delay means just a general delay. We don't know the duration of the delay. So this is the general delay. So then, had some other several healthiness conditions. So finally, function is the H1, H2, H3, and H4. Okay. So let me skip. Okay, then at least I have 5 or 10 minutes to introduce his work. So his new languages say, so this is the discrete part. So skip, kill, stop. So this is the assignment. This is the signal output. This is the signal output. This is the time delay time, death time units. So this is the continuous part behavior. Continuous part, you can be described as a differential equation or differential equation for the variables initially has this V0 variables. Then this is, this is a set of differential equations, This is the commands can be this part or commands can also be this part. So the interesting point is say the continuous differential equation works until when it stops, until this guard is satisfied. And also say this when G is similar like guarded choice, So it has this guarded choice composed with signals or what. So this is the language. Then we say how can we say the alphabet is in and out? This is the discrete part. This is the continuous part. He also introduced the timer. Then we say discrete variable part. Then we say not only the program discrete variables, also we need to have clock variables. Clock variables looks like S.clock, and also ST means program state variable T. TD means initial starting point of the observation interval. So this count is special. Maybe I don't need to introduce. Okay, so maybe let's see several meanings of his statements. So this is just an assignment. Then assignment need to satisfy. So say this is I looks like unit. Then this is alpha input variables. Not input, just say that's x, y, z. Then just say here, say the x is used. We use e to substitute this x, just like x is e. Then also deliver signal. Deliver signal is just like, for simplify, just like here, this is a set. From this set, we put time t, because at the current time point, the signal S is delivering. Then we need to record this moment. So we put the time t into this set, just we substitute. Maybe you can leave this count for special use. Then say data log is say always stable, is always in the waiting state. Then it does not change anything. Time go advance, time passing, then just say time passing. Then delay means delay. You see, if the observation interval is less than that time units, it should be in the waiting state. If it is exact delta units, it should be in the terminating state. Then we say nothing changed, only time go advances. So then say for these statements, it need to have, there are several laws. So deliver signal S, deliver signal S2. Then these two statements can be exchanged. Then this one can be proved from here, the semantic definitions. So then we say dynamic behaviors, say the dynamic behavior can be used by this differential equation. Then we say for discrete variables, it will not change anything. So these things, it will not change, time only advance. Then we see the dynamic behavior just use this differential equation to describe it. So this is the composition, this is the parallel equation. So this is the similar like in the UTP book. This means if say P terminates first, Q terminates late, then parallel composition need to put a delay that we don't know the delay. Then this one should match with the length of this Q. So then also have this law. So let me say let me finish this guard definition, then I can finish it all. So the guard is then we see guard, the definition is say guard is fired. Then say at what time point it should be fired? If it at the should be top belongs to this set. If top belongs to this set and at this time point t, it is satisfied. So this means G is satisfied at the time top. So then we say here, okay, skip guard. Skip guard means immediately it is satisfied. So we say this top should be equal to this t. Then we say this S is fired. So whenever an input S is received means say if say T at this top point G is fired, means say at this top point the signal S is received. So we need to combine it here. So we have these definitions. So then we also have this guard. Then also so then the guard is triggered. We see guard is triggered to be at this final time point. So guard G is triggered should be at this final time point And inside of this time interval, it will not be satisfied. So this is the guard definition of guard inactive. Okay. So then we also have these laws for guard inactive or inactive. So okay, then now comes to the when statement definition. Looks like a guarded choice. We say, so this part, if say, and currently all G1, G2, G3 are not satisfied. So the whole process is in the waiting state. So stable is waiting state. And all these guards, GK, should be inactive, time can advance. Or say at the moment, one guard G is satisfied. So then one guard G is satisfied, and then we say when GI is satisfied, all other guard is triggered or inactive. So maybe let's leave this one. Then after one guard is satisfied, the next behavior should be the corresponding process PR. So this is the when definition. Then we also have this until statement definition and have this law. So maybe I can stop here. So last night I imagined to stop at page 72. So this is the page 72. So maybe using 1 minute, I go through, say, laws of this is signal hiding, just the exist signal. And here, time declarations. So the fixed point that just using 1 minute to go through. Sorry. Then finally, he also let me give. Then finally, he has this case study water tank. So last year he gave a course in Estonia winter school. I also went together with him. Every day when he finished teaching, he hired himself to generate the laws of this kind of when clause or what needed to be accurate. So last year also this period there I found that he's working on these when laws. So he worked on maybe this work for over 2 years. Then he has a full paper of 31 pages long. So if anyone is interested, I can send it. Yeah. So I stop here, finish 72 pages. Thank you.
Well, very well done. Very accelerated version. I'm sure we're all very grateful. Has anyone got any comments, gentle comments? We can email Jiffy. Otherwise, thank you very much.